Hello, everyone, and welcome back to For Fox's Sake. This is the Women's Football Show with me, your host, Lily Saunders. Alongside me today is a very special guest, the wonderful Rob Hayes, who I'm sure you all know very well. But if not, then Rob is the producer of this Women's Football Show, as well as host of the preview here on For Fox's Sake. And one of the editors of our fantastic website for foxsake.news, of which you can get a monthly subscription to for just £5. So, Rob, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. We're just going to run through, I think, some of the highlights from the international window in terms of the Foxes women, as well as looking ahead to the Liverpool game, which is going to be a huge clash for us, one that Leicester City really need a result from. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Rob's experience in the women and girls game across the football landscape. So, Rob, you've written a couple of articles on our website about the international window. What have you made of the Foxes women so far?
Yeah, I think the window was largely positive. Ultimately, you're getting players back that didn't get injured. That's for any team. That's your first thought when a player goes away on international duty. Please don't come back injured. And I think six players going away. Well, six players going away on a senior level, a couple of others at age group, is probably not too many, but not too few. In the sense that a large proportion of the squad was still together and doubtless doing a lot of work on how they approach the sort of run into the end of the season. And then I guess what you're hoping for is that the players that have gone away, especially because they are all the ones that were playing at a senior level, are all very much in the first team picture for their nations. You want them to be playing because otherwise you'd rather just have them at the training ground. You'd rather just have them at Beaver Drive with their club mates. And obviously we got goals from Kane and Lehman, and I'm certain that we're going to talk about where did the goals come from for Leicester City in the final few fixtures of the season. But that's a real positive because they then come back understanding the feeling of scoring goals in a competitive game, which not many Leicester players have had this season. So the goals for me were the biggest one. Obviously, they were the headlines on for foxsake.news that we had goals galore, particularly in the midweek fixtures with Kane and Lehman. So, yeah, I think the window as an entirety very positive if you're a fan of Leicester.
Yeah, I totally agree. And seeing it from Hannah Kane, especially, who's perhaps, lost her starting role recently and has come off the bench and attempted to make an impact. It's good to see that Leicester have firing power from all of their forward players. For me, that was really positive, as well as Alicia Lehmann getting a goal. I think she's found it quite hard to get back into the Swiss side. And to be starting. So for her to start and get a goal is really positive as well. And you'd hope, I completely agree with you that 6 players away is not too many, not too little, because, they bring back that momentum to Beaver Drive. And I think the 4 weeks, between the last game and this Liverpool game, there's positives and negatives to it. Rick Parsamall's able to get the girls together and perhaps look at what went wrong against Manchester City and how they can really step that up to meet Liverpool, who are on a real good run of momentum. So I think the international players coming back and bringing that experience will be key. Looking ahead then, I guess, to this Liverpool match, it's a big fixture for us. As we've got a couple coming up as well against Villa as well, which will be a big game. I suppose some of the positives from a Liverpool perspective is that they'll be without Fuka Nagano, who's their pivot player. She's kind of been a real bonus for them this season with her creativity and clinicality. And she's away because of the Asian Cup, which Emily Van Egmond from Leicester will also be. And unfortunately, Mia Enderby picked up an injury against Everton, but fortunately for us, she was on quite a good run of form. So being without those 2 key players, I think will put Leicester in good stead. Where else could you see Leicester kind of taking positives from this Liverpool side, Rob?
Yeah, I think you've got to take any positive you can if you're in a relegation scrap. I know you were on Radio Leicester this week on the Women's Sports Show, and you were quite hesitant to commit to whether Leicester are in a relegation scrap or not. And they are in the sense of the WSL, but I totally agree with the point that you made in the sense that you would back Leicester in that playoff game against the third place team in the WSL 2 to secure their WSL 1 status for another season. But ultimately, you don't want to leave it to that chance. You don't want to be in that 12th place. So if Liverpool are missing a couple of key players on a human level, obviously you don't want anybody to be hurt, but on a footballing level, yes, please. Anything that makes Liverpool a little bit more beatable, because if you look at it, if you try to look at it over the course of the entire season, Leicester are only a point behind Liverpool. But if you look at it as a sort of snapshot of the last 4 or 5 games, both of Liverpool's league wins this season have come in the last 4 games, whereas Leicester have lost 4 on the bounce. So if there's anything that can disrupt the Liverpool, the rhythm that they were starting to get themselves into, 1, it's a 4-week break. Fantastic timing in that respect. 2, it's missing a couple of key players through injury.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, I think Beata Olsen is back to her goal scoring ways for Liverpool. She came off the bench for Mia Enderby when she got injured and managed to score their winner. So she'll definitely be one to watch for the Leicester back line. They'll have to really rein her in. She had a fantastic couple of games at the beginning of the season before getting injured. So she will be one that Rick Passmore, I imagine, has a lot of plans for. Denise O'Sullivan as well, as a Liverpool player, is hugely experienced in the midfield and has a wealth of playing experience from being over in the United States for a while, playing for North Carolina Courage. So I've always been a huge fan of Denise O'Sullivan. I think she's a real tough player. So I think Leicester will have to really make sure that they're catering, towards shutting her down and stopping her passage of play. I think this is one that we're going to have to win, isn't it, Rob? If we're talking about this relegation battle, do you think Leicester have what it takes to grab those 3 points?
Yeah, I do, because I think we've spoken about the strength in depth that they now have in forward positions, not just in terms of the players, but also the fact that there are goals coming from elsewhere. Because I say we, I'm on for those of viewers and listeners of this show, I am in the gallery for every show, so I almost feel like I've been part of every single show, even though nobody's ever seen me. But on this show, you and your guests have talked at length about how Leicester get goals, and whether it's the right game for Williams to play as the focal point of the attack and have 2 pacey players either side, whether it's a game that Mouchon starts or whether you use her for the last sort of 20-30 minutes. You've got Hannah Kane, who's coming back from scoring for fun for Wales, but good goals as well, playing on the shoulder, running in behind kind of goals. Whereas, and I think that's why I maybe would lean towards, especially for a starting line, Williams through the middle, and you could play Kane and maybe even say to Lehman, look, you 2 both scored last week. You've got that goal scoring feeling. You 2 play either side, because that is, I wouldn't expect Rick Passmore to be changing shape. I don't think there'll be anything radical formation wise. So I'm hopeful. I mean, I'm looking at the league table and I don't know where the hope is coming from, but because it's 8 goals in 15 league games, it's from a scoring point of view, it's pretty dire, isn't it? But there is something that is filling me with a bit of optimism about goals, and defensively, Leicester aren't too bad. Yeah, I mean, 31 goals. So look, 31 goals, that's an average of what, 2 goals a game. So let's say Leicester have got to score at least 2 to get a result. I think it's absolutely doable, because yes, Liverpool have had an upturn in form, but if Leicester can work hard, frustrate them, and get a couple of opportunities, then there's nothing to say that Liverpool won't then sort of regress to the frailties that they've shown earlier on in the season, and therefore be more beatable than I think some people are saying. Because a lot of people are expecting Liverpool to basically win most of their games between now and the end of the season. They think this is the real Liverpool. They think they're going to sort of potentially climb up to sort of maybe 8th, 9th in the table. Maybe Leicester can knock them down a peg or two this weekend.
Absolutely. I think you're so right in terms of scoring at least 2 goals. I think Rick Parson will have to start Hannah Kane. She's on real good form, and I think having that experience on the wing and playing Lehman as well. Lehman has played as a winger. She's been sort of playing as a striker at the moment, but she has been played as a winger, and both internationally and at club levels. So she knows what she's doing from that respect, and it would be yet another starting 3 up front for Rick Passmore. But it's certainly like at this point in the season, you're going to have to do whatever's possible to put the ball in the back of the net, and if that constitutes another front 3 change, then so be it. And I think he'll be weighing up all the options, won't he, about who's best to start, who's best in terms of continuity. But I agree with you. I think Rachel Williams, she really showed up in that game where she played kind of 70 odd minutes, I think, and she was really impressive. But she always offers that flair off the bench, and Mouchon as well has played a really good false 9 role, I think, recently. So lots of positives for Leicester. I'm not sure they'll have Chantal Swaby in the back line, so then it's a question of who do they play as a centre back, because she's been their mainstay in that back line for the whole season. She's played virtually every game, virtually every minute of every game, and has been fantastic at times. So whether Sari Case starts in that kind of middle centre back, and you have Ale and Thibaut back in, although I think Thibaut might be injured. But yeah, I think Leicester are going to have to get at least 2 goals, like you're saying. They're going to have to take the 3 points. I don't see them. They have a game in hand. I guess that's the only other thing that we need to make a note of.
The game in hand is against Arsenal, though, so
yeah.
Can you think about cashing that in, or do you almost think, right, we need to write that off?
I think I agree with you. I think when I was on the BBC on Tuesday, Charlie, one of the Leicester fans alongside me, was saying that Chelsea and Arsenal's a bit of a write-off in terms of the games, and I'm inclined to agree. I think they can take points off Villa. I think Villa are in a bit of a sticky situation at the moment. They haven't been very consistent. They lost 4-1 to Liverpool earlier in this side of the WSL season. So that's certainly somewhere that Leicester can look at taking points from. But in terms of Liverpool, they have to come away with the win, and their away form doesn't point in the right in the right direction in terms of that. But every day is a day for a new start, a fresh start, I think. So yeah, I'm always the positive. This is what I said to Zoe McGrady on her women's sports show. I have every faith. I think that Leicester can come away with a result, but they have to start on the front foot. They have to go out all guns blazing. They can't afford to sit back and try and soak up any sort of Liverpool pressure, because with Beata Olsen in the front line, that's not going to work. But let's talk a little bit about your football experience, Rob. We'll pivot away from the WSL chat and get to know you a little bit better in terms of what you've got up to in the women and girls game and your experience in that respect. So I have here that you were host of the FA Girls Football Festivals between 2014 and 2017. And for the viewers, that is a national initiative engaging thousands of girls with fun football activities, meeting players, etc. And a fun fact, I think I was actually at one of those events back in the day when I was playing football growing up. I had the pleasure of meeting Siobhan Chamberlain, the former England goalkeeper and Arsenal goalkeeper, and Manchester United, I think, as well. So yeah, talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, there's every chance you also indirectly met me or saw me wandering around with a microphone and making a lot of noise, as I seem to have made a career out of doing. Yeah, oh, they were fantastic. And it was right in the sort of the beginning of the big kind of growth of the game domestically. So it was a fantastic time to be part of it, because ultimately most weeks for those 3 or 4 years, we would be working with a different county FA, and there would be 200-300 girls in the morning session. Another 200-300 would be bussed in from local schools and stuff for the second session in the afternoon. We'd have whichever WSL or championship team at the time were local. They would send us players, for sometimes for most of the day, and I think that's something that women's football has always had, and has really taken with it its growth in terms of accessibility of players to supporters and relatability, in terms of role models, but also in terms of realizing that these are down to earth people who just happen to be very good at sport. So we had them, we'd talk to them about their careers, and some of the girls that would come had been playing football for ages, and just felt like having a half a day off school to come and kick a ball around, which was fantastic. But some were being exposed to football really for the first time almost. And then on that day, to meet people who did it as at least a part-time profession, if not a full-time profession, was just fantastic to see that could be a career path you could go down. We also had Charlotte Lauder, who's a freestyle footballer, world-class freestyle footballer. She had her own TV show on the Disney Channel. She came to every single event as well, and she would show a sort of different side of having a career in football. And my job there was just basically to make sure that everyone was having fun at the same time I was having fun, so everybody went away having had a positive experience. So and what we did with that is the success of that meant that the national FA offered, I think, some kind of subsidies to some of the clubs and said, we can send you our festival team to do a pre-match fan zone outside your stadium for home games. Obviously a smaller version of it. We'd pitch up a couple of hours before kickoff. We'd have some of the activities that were there, and just a lot more information about how to get into football locally. And so yeah, I was privileged to be able to do that. Off the top of my head, I went to quite a few Chelsea games, Arsenal games. We did a few fan zones outside Wembley ahead of big games at Wembley as well. So yeah, that's my experience in the sort of the more grassroots side of it, I guess. The sort of mass participation, the trying to do my part to help increase interest in the game. It was an absolutely brilliant time to be part of it as well, because it, like I say, it was right at the start of the beginning of the upward trajectory that the game's on.
No, definitely. It's when I think 2015, when England came third at the World Cup in Canada, was when I started seeing a lot more in the news about them. And I was only, I think I would have been 11, 12 at the time. Um, and that really kind of made me really excited. I was like, wow, there's professional women's players. Like I'd love to go and watch the Lionesses, this, that, and the other. And thinking about these football festivals growing up, I was very lucky. I had a local team called Bromwood FC on Wandsworth Common in London, but we didn't always have fixtures available. There weren't very many girls teams that were local, and we'd be able, like our parents would be able to take us to. So having these festivals meant that we had the opportunity to play girls all over London, all over the South London region, and actually have some competition rather than just playing each other all the time. And it was so entertaining, and meeting like Siobhan Chamberlain, all of that was just, I just remember being so in awe.
She's
About
so
like
nice as well, Siobhan Chamberlain,
yeah,
doesn't she? She's so nice.
she she was lovely, and she signed this little, I had this silly little I think it was like a brochure for a cafe that my dad had picked up. And I was like, "Oh, can you sign this?" Because I had nothing else that she could have signed. She was like, "Oh, if you want me to." And I've got it stuck on my pin board with a little message saying, "This is Siobhan's signature." And no, it's just that it's taken me back to like growing up, and I have experienced the kind of boom of women's football throughout my teenage years. But that came as a result of these initiatives. And when I think to now, having with the success of the 2 Euros wins for the Lionesses, and, you know, these festivals will be popping up everywhere every week. And we're talking with Steph Powell as well about on our show, our last show, about the importance of volunteers and the grassroots um, kind of organising and pushing football out there and showing girls that it's absolutely a possibility to have a career in football, not just as a player, but also in administrative roles, in kind of operations, management, all of that. So it's so great to hear about it again. It's, you know, it's not something that I think about every day. So yeah. Brilliant. Well, Rob, let's talk a bit about your commentary, and your kind of commentary career. How did that start, and where has that kind of taken you? What have been the highlights,
Yeah.
for that?
So my commentary career started for Leicester City men, 2013, I reckon, around about that time. That is where I met Pete Selby, who I soon afterwards formed For Fox's Sake with. Yes, For Fox's Sake has been running that long, everybody. And it was audio descriptive commentary is how I started. So it was a voluntary role, providing a specific, extremely detailed form of commentary for blind and partially sighted supporters. And pretty swiftly after that, I started to get jobs in other commentary and other sports. And then it essentially became my career fairly swiftly, which was great for me because I just got to watch sport and talk about it, which I would do as an unpaid hobby anyway. And that took me to some incredible games on the men's side of things, but specifically on the women's side of things, I was racking my brains. I've been racking my brains for a few days actually since knowing that I was going to be your guest on the show today about how many record attendances I commentated on at Wembley, and I'm absolutely certain that I was present for at least two, which I'm pretty. Obviously, I wasn't a contributing factor, but I was there. You can say you were there. So the first one that came to mind was England played Germany in a friendly in back end of 2014 at Wembley. So I was there providing the audio descriptive commentary service for Wembley Stadium. And I mean, Germany at that point were miles ahead of pretty much definitely most of the European teams. And England, I mean, they hit the bar early doors through Jordan Nobbs, but didn't really get anywhere near Germany after that. And that was after that, Mark Sampson went, "Oh, we've still got 6 months till the World Cup," and the World Cup went pretty well, to be fair. But it looked at that moment like there was a huge gulf. But I was there. It was a record crowd for an England home game, 45,619. No, I don't remember that. I researched that bit, and it was Karen Carney's 100th cap, which I didn't recall for this show until I started looking back at the game itself. But obviously, that would have been a big talking point at the time. So. Yeah. That was one of the biggest games I did in the women's game. I also did the FA Cup final in 2016, and looking at the lineups for these teams, we're talking. I mean, some of the narrative at the moment is that there's only been sort of women's football household names in the last, I don't know, you put it in a window of maybe 6 or 7 years, possibly. But we're talking the FA Cup final 10 years ago. The Arsenal team featured Alex Scott, Casey Stoney, Farrah Williams, Jordan Nobbs, Kelly Smith, and then Daniela van der Donk and Leah Williamson both came off the bench in that. Obviously, it's a young Leah Williamson at that point. And the Chelsea team, you're talking Millie Bright, Jelly Flaherty, Katie Chapman was in that team, Karen Carney, Frank Kirby, Eni Aluko and Beth England came off the bench. So this is a decade ago, and that the quality of that FA Cup final was really, really something else, and it was a record attendance for a women's FA Cup final at nearly 33,000. So, though to be part of, and that was a great time because we've talked about I was helping out at the grassroots level, and I was seeing the growth there. And then the next thing, you're at record attendances at Wembley, commentating on huge games like that. And so I've been very privileged, I guess, to see the both ends of the women's game, both nationally and internationally, over the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and I totally agree with you. I think if you know your women's football, if your kind of experience and knowledge of that precedes Euro 2022, you would know that household names have existed for long before that. I mean, Kelly Smith is the GOAT. She is England's biggest star, still record goal scorer. Oh no, sorry, that's Ellen White now, but was England's record goal scorer for nearly 2 decades. So it's awesome to hear about that. And I think the 2016 FA Cup final was broadcast. I remember watching one around that time, a women's final, but it might not have been that one. But it was awesome, and hearing the likes of Alex Scott and Leah Williamson as a youngster, you forget how young the players start their careers, and I think that's a testament to kind of the growth of the game. And also back in the day, I think Sam Kerr started for Australia aged 15, and that was the done thing back then. And now we've got the development in the academies, and you're seeing such longevity in the careers of these women's players, and they're playing well into their 30s now.
Yeah, we've just had a comment in actually on YouTube from someone about Sam Kerr. Very, very.
I didn't even.
Very interesting that's got. I thought you were segueing beautifully into that.
No, I should have played it off. So this from Buzzer 1224, unrelated, but I'm Australian, and Sam Kerr has done the absolute world for women's football in our country. It's now the number 1 played sport for young Aussie girls by far. I was in Australia at the 2023 World Cup. I went to the final, and I watched obviously the semi-final, and seeing the kind of buzz around the Matildas really was kind of a reflection and brought me back to 2022 when England won, and it was that same kind of, oh my goodness, like, look at this amazing group of women and what they've achieved, and they've got to a semi-final of a World Cup, and the whole country gets behind you. And that's so great to hear from kind of the Australian fans here on For Fox's Sake, that you're experiencing the same thing. And like I said, I've watched Sam Kerr's first goal for Australia, and she attempts a backflip and lands on her face, and seeing her, how she's become such a household name over there. And you kind of, I think, look at the USA, they've had their 99ers, that they're getting a film made about that, and just seeing this growth and kind of these legends that have come out of it, it's really exciting to think about the kind of players that we'll be talking about for 20, 30 years to come. So yeah, that's brilliant. And how cool to be able to comment on an FA Cup final, Rob. I hope I can follow in your footsteps one day.
I'm absolutely sure you will. You're doing a stellar job of hosting this show. If this can at least help nudge you in the right direction, it's great.
I hope so. And I'm hoping BBC Radio Leicestershire will have me back on. Shout out Zoe McGrady. You can go and watch that episode over on BBC Sounds if you'd like to. It's a good chat, first half an hour of it. But I think that's all we have for you today, guys. Best of luck, Leicester City at Liverpool. Let's get your score prediction, Rob.
Everything about me is saying 2-2, but I know that it is very, very much close to being a must-win game. Especially when you think about the fact that Villa's coming up as well, and if Leicester beat Liverpool and beat Villa, all of a sudden Villa are sucked into and the more teams that are sucked into the battle, the better. So I'm going for I'm going to say that it's going to be 2-2 at 90 minutes. There's going to be a stoppage time winner from one of the many forwards that we've mentioned on the show this evening. I don't want to pick one because I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket, but I think this is going to be where Leicester find their scoring boots. 3-2 late win. That's what I'm going for.
I like that. Keeping with the positive theme, I'm going to piggyback off of Rob and say the exact same thing. Although I think Leicester will leave it late. I think it'll be 2-1 to Liverpool until the 89th minute, and then Leicester will score 2 goals.
Oh, you've got 2 late goals. I love that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be chaos. I think they're going to realise, got to fight for it, and all hell will break loose, and we'll come away with the 3 points, and they'll finally break their away form curse. Well, it's not really a curse; it's just a streak, isn't it? But okay, 3-2 from the both of us. Good luck to the Foxes women, and thank you so much for tuning in. This has been the Women's Football Show, and we shall see you next week.